some challenges getting into potty training. So let's start with the pre-K standards. So it's not required for children to be potty trained to enter pre-K. That's a question I get from a lot of families around the community that'll call and say, well, my kid's not potty trained, so can they go to school? And the answer is yes, both for our 3-year-old pre-K programs, which obviously you guys will be here for that, and for our 4-year-old pre-K programs. And this year our state standards actually changed to include toilet learning language. So our state standards that we have to follow for our grant funding say pre-K programs must support toilet learning in classrooms, including working in partnership with families to create supportive environments to ensure successful toilet learning. Pre-K programs may not refuse to enroll children that are not toilet independent. So that's good to know whether you stay in the public schools for a 4-year-old program, whether you go to a community program. If a program receives state funding, they must enroll children even if they're not potty trained. And then our family handbook also has language about toilet learning. And so we really stress the independent use of the bathroom as a goal in pre-K, but again, it's not required. So children do not need to be independent in their toileting skills to attend public school. If your child is not yet toilet trained, we will create a plan and work with you to help them learn these skills. Families will need to provide diapers / pull-ups and wipes, and extra set of clothes will be essential to go through the process. So pretty standard, toilet training is not required, but families are required to provide diapers or pull-ups if your child is still using those. So like I said, in the school setting, our big goal is to develop independence in a whole host of personal hygiene skills. So in early pre-K and pre-K, our goal is to help children gain independence in their personal hygiene. So that's toileting, that's hand washing, that's dressing, that's taking care of their dental hygiene. And children are encouraged to take care of personal hygiene needs with increased independence throughout the school year. So for example, at the beginning of the year, we know a child coming into pre-K might need an adult right next to them modeling each step in the hand washing process. And later in the year, maybe the child only needs pictures of the hand washing process in order to do that. So we know this is a process throughout the school year. I don't have it memorized. Children are involved in the greatest extent possible in toilet activities. So if the child comes in and they're using diapers or pull-ups, they'll be encouraged to sit on the toilet, even if they're not yet comfortable taking off the pull-up. Sitting on the toilet even with their pull-up on, just to start getting used to that process. They're encouraged to alert an adult when they feel they have a soiled diaper. So helping them gain that awareness of their body. Am I wet? Do I need to be changed? Am I uncomfortable? Children might be provided with a visual support to remind them to sit on the toilet throughout the day. So, some children might have a little toy of a toilet that reminds them, this is when I go use the toilet, or they might have a visual schedule that has a toilet time marked throughout the day. And then if children are using pull-ups or diapers, we like to have them assist in changing their own pull-up or diaper. I will say if your child has pull-ups, please put them in the tear side pull-ups. It's so much faster than if you have to take off socks and shoes. But we do want them to help, pull their diaper down, put it in the trash, put their new diaper on, and then cleaning their hands after every diaper change as well. So again, they're getting involved in that toileting process. You want to say something about toileting, Charlotte?
Use gloves.
Yes.
Make sure someone is there with you.
And then, personal hygiene is broader than just toilet training. We talk about, diaper and toilet training a lot, but we really want to look at personal hygiene and self-help skills in a holistic way. And so through the early childhood years, a child develops personal care and hygiene skills like growing independence in washing hands, brushing teeth, as well as toileting, exhibiting self-help skills when dressing, cleaning up, participating in meals, and then recognizing and communicating the need to use the restroom. So, all of those skills are interconnected. In the schools, we use visual supports to help with different personal hygiene skills, including toilet learning. So you can see this is an example example of, I can use my laser. Oh no, it doesn't show. Okay.
Oh, wait, yeah, try to get it.
Can you see it?
It's the angle. There it is. If you stand in front
I'm
of
gonna
it.
find something. I'll just, I guess I'll stand up. So, this is an example of a within task schedule for hand washing, where you can see each step is laid out for the children, and I have some, hand washing and toileting task schedules on the table, if anyone's interested in grabbing one, as well as a toileting task schedule. So we like to have these, taped on the mirror in the bathroom, taped in front of the toilet in the bathroom, so the kids have that visual reminder. Most kids think this one is hilarious. There's a little oops in the toilet. And this one with the butt, you get a good kick out of it. These are some examples of, potty training schedules. So on this side, we've got a morning schedule that just has potty in the schedule, so the child can see, okay, first I take off my pajamas, then I use the bathroom, brush teeth, shower. This is more of a potty training schedule that we've used for some kids in the schools who are in the process of potty training. The treasure chest you can use or not. It really just depends on the kid and, what they need. And then we also use social stories with children to talk about using the bathroom at school. Some kids, have a fear of using the bathroom at school, especially the automatic flush toilets can be a little intimidating for children sometimes. Putting a diaper over the sensor makes it not flush.
Oh, good too.
Yeah. It's amazing what you learn when you teach pre-K, how much you see about other people in the bathroom. But reading stories to the children about, it's normal to use the bathroom at school, you might feel a little scared, this is what you can do if you feel scared, this is how you act to use the bathroom at school. So really just normalizing using the bathroom, that, it's okay to do this at school. Teachers, I should have said this earlier, but teachers will work with you in whatever your toilet learning plan is at home. So it's unlikely that a teacher alone can potty train a child at school. Particularly when we get into the 4-year-old programs where you might have 20 children and 2 teachers. They'll coordinate with you on what your toilet learning plan is at home. So if you're working on it at home, please let them know, hey, we're in underwear for the first time today, get that kid out of the toilet every 30 minutes. Just communicating with your child's teacher in whatever you're doing in the home so we can support in the schools. This is in our handbook, and I think it's really important. It is essential that each child is treated as an individual and care is given as gently and respectfully as possible. So toileting is this huge milestone for children, and it's also this very vulnerable process. How many of us don't want to poop in a public place, right? It's super vulnerable, and so we want to make sure that children feel respected and comfortable when they're in this process of using the bathroom at school. And that is it for my part. I'm happy to answer any questions about potty training or toileting sort of in the school setting. If anyone has questions. Thank you. I did a great job covering everything. Yes. All right, I'll pass it over to this wonderful, experienced woman.
Anything, you guys are welcome to just start, anything you want to share to add on to Lauren's, and maybe we can take questions.
There's only one thing, just because it prompted, I have a funny story about the automatic toilets, because this is, as when my daughter was learning, had been doing great for months, was fully potty trained, and, we took a trip, a vacation, and this was back, she's gonna be 26 this month, so this is before all the bathrooms were automated, at the airport. She sat down and it flushed, and I don't know, those toilets, you feel like your soul is being sucked. They're whoosh, and she flew off of there, and she did not go to the bathroom again for a few months. I mean, it completely reset. So everything she had known, she didn't, and that was kind of, as a parent, it was wait, what? but you're, and we were on a vacation, so of course I didn't bring tons of pants, you know, and, yeah, so that sometimes happens, they regress a little bit from different things, so that was her thing, and to this day, she's still a little wary. She's fine, she's 26 years old, but does not like, you know, because it's things like that can really be scary. And I had read something in my notes that, you know, when you're introducing them, don't flush it while they're on it, because that can be very alarming, so.
And I like this statement, and my expertise, I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and so mostly I'm working with kids one-on-one, and in the homes or you know, in very small preschool settings. But I think, you know, it is really important to think about, toilet training is just a pain in the butt. I mean, it is so hard. And this is even under the best of circumstances. It is so hard. But in the way of, you know, treating children as gently and respectfully as possible and giving yourself a break when you need it. But your, what you communicate about your emotions, your frustration, your upset about some of the things that they're doing in the bathroom, it communicates very well, regardless of whether the child has a disability or not. And so, you know, if you are having trouble staying calm, then tomorrow's another day, just give it up and walk away, and tomorrow's another day. So be gentle with yourselves, especially in your home setting, and I'm sure that the teachers get instructions on how to be gentle or take breaks, because it can be, there is no doubt, it can be a very frustrating process. It's very rewarding, and you know, I toilet trained my first child who was 11 years old in 1974. He was very severely disabled, and but how it opened up the world for him was incredible. And so, you know, whether you're talking with typically neurotypical kids or neurodiverse kids, think about independence and quality of life, and I have been fascinated by it since 1974 because of the doors that it opens, particularly for those kids that have severe disabilities. Sermon over.
I wanted to mention too, just for the families in our class, you know, and the other classes have this too, that there's a toilet log. And I know you guys all sign in them in the morning. You can also check that at the end of the day. And there's a TT, the column, there's a key to show you what all those initials mean. But it can show if your child used the toilet. Like Santos uses the toilet almost every day, but he's still in diapers. You know, he's kind of in that in-between place. So you can check and see, did my child sit on the toilet? And there'll be a check mark there and kind of a note. You can also reach out to your teachers and say, you know, this is what's happening at home, what's going on at school, because we do really want to work with you in that process.
No, you're fine. I'm just wondering if there's particular questions that people have.
A question. There's lots of books out there about strategies and trying this method and this method and this method. Do you recommend, like, is there one method that you recommend?
For me, and I'll let her answer, and she is no. Just because every child is very unique and different. Some are pretty easily incentivized. You know, you just get them the pretty panties and you're good to go. There's stickers, and others, like my youngest, no. There was nothing. You could have written her a check, like nothing, you know, until she was ready. But she was also very uncomfortable so it was easy. Like, she was easy. I knew, because she didn't like the discomfort of being in a soiled diaper. So she was just like, ew, no, done. So it was that quick, but that's not the case because every child is individual. So I don't know, in all the years I worked with little kids, I've never found one, but what I do know and remember is when they're ready, they're ready. And it's hard to push when that is, like, developmentally, I come from, are they verbal? You know, what's going on physically in their body, you know, are they ready physically? and that, when that time comes, it's a little easier. It's when the families, I had a lot of parents that work with toddlers a long time, well, I'm tired of buying diapers. I get that, they're expensive, but at the same time, if that's the incentive, then it's gonna be really tricky. If it's coming from your motivation versus, it gets a little challenging, so, yeah.
Well, and so, with my own children who are middle-aged now, I used toilet training 24 hours or less by Fox and Azrin, who are very famous behavior analysts. Didn't work. But a lot of the current literature, because I do keep up with the current literature, draws on that literature. My children, who are middle-aged, and they have, I have my 11-year-old grandson and an 8-year-old granddaughter, both of them have autism, and I have a 5-year-old grandson. And my children used this book, and I have a handout here, called Oh Crap Potty Training, by Jamie Glowacki, I think, is how that is. And there I also have a thing for children that have significant developmental delays. So, I sort of summarized Glowacki's steps here, if you're interested. And that toilet training in less than a day is still available, and it can work. My son was less than 2 years old, and he was a son, and he had some, sensory processing was really never his thing. And speaking to the age, it's really, as she said, it is extremely important to make sure that a child is ready, but it's also, that readiness is usually between 20 to 30 months, because those are the ages when kids are still really anxious to please. You pass that time when they get to they're not gonna do a darn thing you say, then that makes it more difficult. So if they are still, as long as they're still reinforced by making you happy, if you can smile or give them a pat on the back or whatever, and they're still just so thrilled, then toilet training is going to be somewhat easy. And children with developmental delays are going to take a little bit longer, but it is really important not to wait too long, because the behavior becomes habituated, and this is they develop certain signals that they get in their head, and I don't know if any children have some neurodiversity in the ways of autism, but autism, kids can develop some really interesting ways of thinking about toileting, and so it really is important to be aware of those kinds of things. Was that sure?
So I've got my second born. The first born I thought would have been the harder one, and she's definitely, taken us by storm with this one. So she, I think part of it too is that I'm working full time now. I was able to dedicate so much more focus. There was one child, I'm a single parent, it's a lot going on here. And then of course the transitions between environments of being at home versus being at school. We have continued transitions on the horizon, and I think part of the OCRAP method, which is what we started my son on, and then that worked kind of for going pee, and then we took it almost a whole other year. And one day an M&M changed everything. That was all it took. But so for her, I guess what I'm wondering is feeling a little hopeless in the fact that we have so many transitions coming, and that we're this summer, right? I was like, oh, I'll really lock in this summer. That's not really an option for us because we've got a lot of things happening. We're moving, and so there's a lot of. I don't know if you have any suggestions for what to do in a situation when a kid has loads of environmental transitions.
I'll go ahead and then that's not really uncommon, and the transitions make it extra hard. I guess what I would say is, to the extent that is possible, if you can block out just a part of a day in the most familiar or, you know, 1 or 2, and block out, you know, like 3 or 4 hours, and just really focus in on those 3 or 4 hours, and then you're done, and you go ahead and do with the other things. But try to, you know, and if you can, if you don't have 4 hours, 3 hours. If you don't have 3, try 2. It needs to be, you know, a somewhat length of time, because not everybody even pees every 3 hours, so.
So pushing the liquids bit of
Yeah.
the crap. And so we did that actually months ago, and she like locked in and was solid, and she at home would use the bathroom perfectly, like, you know, and then just hit a point where she's like, I don't wanna do it anymore. So that's that fun
That's pretty
regression
common
bit.
too, they realize the novelty has worn off,
Yeah.
and it's a lot, like it's a very complex thing, because you have to remember, well, first you gotta remember, like, oh, I gotta go somewhere else now to do this thing, and then I gotta undress, and then I gotta do the thing, and then I gotta dress, and then I gotta wash hands, and it's just very complicated, and a lot of kids, littles especially, get to that place where like, oh, that's a lot. Like, I'm sitting here playing, I'm having a great time, you know, so I think it's like what she was just saying, like just finding, even though there's a lot of transitions, being at least somewhat consistent, like finding that time, whether it's in the morning or before bed, you know, whatever that time is gonna be, pretty steady.
Yeah.
To kind of just
Like
keep it in the
daily?
forefront.
Like a daily thing, or like if I can do it on Saturday morning and then Sunday morning.
Do it Saturday, do when you can do it,
Okay.
but maybe even in the in-between times that it's still there. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
still even just like these very gentle reminders, or these, you're
Right.
still talking about it, you're maybe reading a story, you're like, you know, it's still kind of, the subject is there, you know.
And the other thing that kids kind of lose focus because the big party comes when you pee in the toilet.
Yes.
Well, the big party needs to come for keeping your pants dry.
Yeah,
So if you
okay.
can give a dry pants check every, you know, I mean, a lot of programs say start off with 10 minutes or so, but if you can start off with a dry pants check, hey, sweetie, are your pants dry? Oh, man, good job,
That's
girl.
awesome advice. Thank
And
you.
then, and, you know, and if you, I mean, and go with those M&Ms, they
Yeah,
they don't need to last forever, but then as soon as, you know, if she's keeping it, you know, 10 minutes for an hour, then the next hour you're gonna go up to 15, and
Okay,
the next,
right.
so, and it's fine to reinforce for peeing in the toilet, hey, way to go, you did it.
Right.
But the big party, it comes from keeping your pants clean and dry, because that's the point of toilet training.
Yeah.
So that's where the stronger reinforcers.
And if you have boys, you might want to revisit the Cheerio M&M thing later on in their,
Or make them
in their life, or make them say, revisit it.
Awesome.
And I set up the morning schedule, that's been helpful out of my classroom of, you know, having the potty in the schedule so that they know, like for that hour or 2 hours, that's potty training time. They got that visual input too of like, I'm gonna use the potty during this time.
And they see their friends too, that's oftentimes in a school setting, when they start seeing all their peers, and they're like, some kids, some are like, but some are like, where are you going, what's happening? And they watch, you know.
Yeah, the communal bathrooms are sometimes.
And you should be able to wean off of the dry pants check within, a few days, depending on your time and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
it's going. But you don't wanna, you know, you don't want them to force.
Yeah.
Yeah. And clean and dry.
Right.
And so your pants are clean and dry.
They're never clean.
Yeah.
And then, and then if there's an accident, then all you say is, whoops, we had an accident, let's try it. And there are some other ways you can deal with that for kids that are really incorrigible, but they're kind of. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So if there's not one secret successful method, are there definitely things that don't work? We should not.
Shame, I would say shame, blame, get in trouble. Because again, it's a biological function and we all do it. I think books like the Olympics, so it's a classic, but it's truly work. I think just taking out the shame and blame of it, and when again, if the focus is on you, like I want you to be potty trained because that's usually a setup for not going so well, typically, but I don't know, there's.
Well, and I would also say if the, putting too much emphasis on the, I mean, in school, I absolutely, they absolutely have to be made in school, and that's a fact of life for 12 years through. At home, don't put a big deal on communicating. If they get in there by themselves, woohoo, that's a great part. So, you know, the emphasizing benefit to them, keeping clean and dry, that they can do it themselves, that they can, and, you know, just not being, I would not unless, I mean, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, don't be punitive in any way. It just happens. Oops, an accident. If the kid is feeling uncooperative, you can say, help me clean up, and that's just absolutely fine. If they're not cooperative, then don't bother, just maybe have to move on and start over. But I think the biggest,
Yeah.
being too punitive.
Yeah, because I know it is frustrating. I mean, I will honestly admit, my mom, those were not some of my best mommy moments. With my older daughter, for sure, you know, there was definitely some frustration, and it just leads down the road again, like, and it's secretive, and then you've got, like, children hiding their underwear because they're afraid of getting in trouble, so you're finding soiled underwear in the couch cushions, and things happen, and then they're a little more hesitant to go in a more public, like at school, because they're embarrassed and they're not comfortable with it, so. And it is hard, I mean, it's easier said than done, because I know it is frustrating, especially when you think they've gotten it. And they're like 2 weeks in, and you're like, whew, wow, that was, and then all of a sudden they start having accidents through, whether they're going through a transition or you're moving, just know, because I think your foresight is good, is transitions are hard on little people, and so that will have oftentimes an effect on toileting and behaviors, etc. And just having that knowledge is helpful, because you're like, okay, you know, like it won't be a big shock if it happens, and to just kind of give yourself, like she said, a lot of grace, and them too, because it's a lot. Yeah, a lot to remember.
And if the regression happens, after several months, if you get a regression way after several months, then you probably need to get that medical check. Make sure it's not a urinary tract infection or something, yeah.
And also, one of the simple things, clothing. I think sometimes parents, the little kids' clothes nowadays are just adorable, but they're not very practical. If you're going through like toileting and they're wearing the cute little overalls and all the things with the buttons, I mean, let's be real, like even as adults, there's some outfits, I mean, you're like, oh God, you got it in your button in there. Think of when you're 3, like that's a big deal, and so they just being very mindful of how you dress them, especially for school, like elastic pants, that's the way to go, and just, because I don't know that a lot of, because they're really like, oh, I want them to look so cute, and they do, but this is not very practical, and if they're having that type of issue, then, to just be a little more thoughtful and mindful of that.
Kind of on the same track as clothes, do you think it's beneficial to just wear underwear? For me, I always felt like when my kids were wearing like throwaway diapers, the sensation of being wet is pretty minimal because of how absorbent they are. And when I started putting them in underwear, I felt like they felt the pee-pee and they could make that connection a lot better than just continuing to wear their
That's
diapers.
my opinion, I don't know if you share that, I'm not a fan of clothes at all. Just again, I was a toddler teacher for a long time, and like you said, like at least do it that way, but I'm the same thing, it's just because it's a sensory issue, but I don't know.
I agree, but, in the summer, if you can take them out on the patio, just have a potty seat right there, do your thing, and they don't need to learn anything. They're just, the HOA is not gonna get after you. But yeah, and actually, and I do agree regarding the pull-ups or diapers or, you know, really thick training pants, but the literature doesn't bear that out. Because there's a lot of training literature, especially in behavior analysis. Did you have another question?
That was it, it was the progression of going from naked to adding pants with no underwear to then adding an underwear.
Well, and then
Yeah.
going back to the whole idea of dry pants checks, you need to know immediately.
Yeah.
If there needs to be, intervention around wet pants. And
So I have kind of like a two-part question. So one's related to VMs. My daughter will like go into her room and she'll say, "Mommy, I need some privacy. Mommy, I need some privacy." 5-word utterance. And this little girl closes the door, she'll do her thing, and then she's like, "Ooh, I have a poop in my diaper," right? So I think her communication is up here, but I'm like, I can't even get her to sit on the potty. I'm like, "Julie, let's go try and sit on the potty. Like, I'll sit on this potty, you sit on your potty, we'll go together." Like, she's like, "No, I'm still a baby."
is she afraid?
She's communicated that she's afraid. We have 2 like on the floor potties. We have a potty that goes over the adult toilet that has a step and handlebar. Like we have all the like tricks. I've got the underwears. I've got the like. She just is not interested.
So I would say step one is, thank you for asking me for privacy. Let's take it in the potty. And either if you have more than one potty, she can pick which potty she wants.
So
And
for your
there's.
proximity to the potty. Okay, got it.
So the first thing you wanna do is just get her in the door, and she doesn't need to sit on the potty, she doesn't need to look at the potty, she just gets in the door.
Yeah.
And then eventually, once she gets used to, I'm gonna have a moment of privacy, fine, go and have your moment of privacy, and then you help her clean up, and it's all good.
Okay.
And then, once she's gotten used to doing that in the bathroom, then try to get her to sit on the potty, don't take the diaper off, just leave it on. And she sits on the potty, she has her moment of privacy, clean up, blah, blah, blah. So then when she gets used to that, you're gonna cut a hole in the bottom of the diaper. So that the poop goes, or the poop goes into the potty, okay? So just cut the hole, but she's still wearing the diaper, she's still got that nice pressure around her belly. And she poops into the potty, and then once she gets used to doing that, and you're gonna go through a lot of diapers, but once she gets used to doing that, then you can, and I have had kids where I have cut the whole diaper and left the waist in. Because they want the pressure around their, around
Right,
their tummies.
sure.
So, and eventually, but those you can reuse.
That's the best case scenario when she tells us she needs privacy, most of the time she just goes and disappears, quiet for a little bit, like go in the backyard or you tuck away somewhere. And then
Well,
comes back
that's-
later and she kind of peeks around.
And, I did this for my kids and done it for many kids since, has had a toy in the bathroom that can only be used when you're pooping in the bathroom. The only time you can look at this particular book or play with this particular toy or have this particular stuffy is when you are in the bathroom pooping, and that's it. So that she knows that that's what's waiting there.
Can you talk a little bit about daytime versus nighttime? Like, I don't know, I think maybe like being able to hold urine while you're unconscious asleep is a little bit different than when you're awake.
So there are medications, and there is also it's a buzzer that you can snap into the underwear, that when they wet at night, it will go off. And because what happens at night is some kids just get into such a deep sleep that they can't be awakened. And that buzzer sort of resets the brain. It only takes 2 or 3 times. If they're truly trained, that buzzer will reset the brain. I personally, I think, used it with my daughter. It worked very well, but it was just, I don't really think it was necessary. I think I just give it time.
I've heard people say that like you're not ready to start potty training until you have dry diapers when you wake up in the morning, and that hasn't been my experience, but I feel like my son is a long ways from having dry diapers in the morning. Should I like be getting him up to try in the middle of the night? No, just wait for it to happen.
And that's a thing where you don't want him to be 15 and having you get him up.
Right, or him having to wake up.
I think it's, yeah, my 5-year-old grandson, he did pretty well by the time he was about 2 and a half. He was pretty trained, but he still doesn't wake up dry every night.
Yeah.
So, and I think mom's okay with leaving it. I think that's fine. Pooping would be a different thing.
To expand on that a little bit, we've got a 5.5-year-old that most nights can't make it through. We will wet a nighttime diaper. Is it worth having like an hour egg timer go off and like after you sleep and then like wake up and then go, we call it tactical?
You know, there are some methods that suggest that you do wake in the middle of the night and take them on a trip schedule. You know, as I said, both my older grandchildren have autism, so they went well into, but they both then just decided when they were done. And they were okay. So it really, you know, you can try it on a trip schedule at night, but a lot of times, depends on how deeply asleep they are.
What I hear you saying is that it's within the realm of normal to not be making it through the night dry, even up to age like, what, 6 or 7?
No, I don't think I'd worry about it until 6 or 7.
That's probably what right, just again, because it's a two-part, you know, they have, like, obviously she has the language. Cause you know, when you're like, oh, that's cold, okay, but also the physical development, and like she said, you know, you just kind of have to monitor that, cause there's a possibility it could be a physical issue, you know, to check with their pediatrician, but, you know, kind of as a two-part thing, you know, for kiddos, and are they developmentally ready, do they have the dexterity, like, to remove their clothes, do they, you know, what are their habits regularly, like, does this little person, like, that they wake up, what, they sleep, obviously, are they sleeping through the night typically, like, all night long, and that's pretty good. You know, there's a payoff to that too, so you just have to kind of check developmentally where they are and see if there's any kind of physical stuff. I know for little, sometimes like pooping takes a little longer than peeing, for a lot of issues, you know, for a lot of reasons, so again, just kind of being mindful of some of the developmental stages too, and that's not unusual.
So what are you recommending, just to, I didn't have to do potty training, they did it all in school, and my son wore, cloth diapers, so when they feel like, not the baby anymore, took the diaper and that was it.
Yeah.
But, so you're recommending that they can be in the toilet during the day and then put a pull-up or something at night, or just leave them in underwear?
It depends on the kid, I mean, I would probably just leave them in underwear, but if it's a chronic, like every night, they're soiling the bed and soiling, then that's something to look at, cause that could be something more physical thing, or they just sleep so hard that it's like, well, I guess we're gonna have to do this, cause I'm changing sheets every day.
Then you
So,
know,
that makes sense.
my
Yeah.
5-year-old grandson, he just wears pull-ups at night.
Yeah.
It's
This
Sleep-
one pays through
sleep
them.
pants, and they make
Yeah.
them, they make nighttime pull-ups.
Would you guys tell a little about some of the things you might see that indicate that your child is starting to be ready, some of the developmental things you see? Like their own awareness?
I think, well, I know like what I've seen, especially in the class, is that curiosity, and that's one of the first things you kind of want to foster, is that curiosity, and start talking, just introducing the concept, you know, because either they'll kind of follow you in, or like cats that just definitely go in the bathroom with you, but you know, if they're just kind of curious in nature, and you want to foster that, and just start mentioning it, not like pushing it, but just like, oh, I'm going to the potty, and when you're ready, or you can get a little potty, or I didn't have a little potty, you know, we used the little placement thing, but they didn't fall down in. You know, just kind of starting to have like the little conversation, and some kids will be very curious about it, or in school, you know, the ones that are like following their friends in and they're watching, and it's like, yeah, those communal bathrooms are kind of funny in pre-K. But yeah, it's just, it's kind of, it's like two-part, you know, you wanna kind of bring the subject up in a very intentional way, and also, if they're curious, then really lean in to that, let them go with you, you know, and you can talk about it, and don't, it doesn't have to be this big, long lesson of the day, but also, you know, just having those conversations in books. There's just so many wonderful little storybooks about going to the potty that are very nice and thoughtful and developmentally appropriate. There's some that are not, I'm sure you can attest to, but, yeah, there's, you know, I think that's kind of where it begins, like, just see.
And you could, again, developmentally, like before the bath time, put them on the potty and see if they pee, or first thing in the morning and you take the nighttime diaper off, put them on the potty and see if they pee. But again, that needs to start, I mean, not too early, but early enough. It's, I think the error that I see, or one of the issues that I see more frequently now than over the past 50 years is starting to be regular earlier.
I think we'll hear them talk about some of their body functions as well, like noticing I'm wet, or, you know, if they're able to verbalize that, that's sometimes a sign that, okay, they're more aware, you're developing.
Right, yeah.
Asking for privacy is
That's a huge one that she knows.
What about leveraging liquids? Like, so if we, you know, we're locking in for a few hours, like, here's a big bottle of apple juice for you or whatever, and then even similarly though with the nighttime, like not maybe pushing liquids or not allowing, not, you know, limiting, I should say, towards bedtime. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, definitely, and if you do with the juices, so if you are gonna lock in for your 4 hours, you load them up on juice, have your 4 hours, use pretzels, pretzels, you know, salty snacks, chips,
Oh, yeah.
for reinforcers, and, cause that's gonna make them thirsty and they'll drink more. But then do, you know, before bed, you know, kind of lean back on it.
And make sure, you know, cause juices, and just mindful, cause that's kind of also diuretic, and so you wanna, like, water is really a great
It's not
thing.
as motivational as like, and we do.
I know, but apple juice has a little more kick.
Sure
Here,
does.
have some water, you know, so, yeah, it's, I mean, it's, yeah, it's kind of twofold, but yeah, you just have to be thoughtful of, we have to go on a big long car trip. I mean, think of us, you know, I don't know, like, you know, you have to be just very thoughtful, like, where am I gonna be, what am I gonna be doing, how long am I gonna be in the car, you know, same thing for little kids too, yeah, I know they're scheduled.
But during the process,
Yeah.
you wanna create as many opportunities for practice as you can.
Right.
I was just thinking about how like when they're doing it and then you're going to Walmart, right? And you're like, how am I gonna, you know, like obviously their toilets at Walmart, but they're not little toilets, you know? And like, I was like thinking about like how you deal with that sort of transition to different, I don't know, places.
And I think just always have your, like, I used one of those, it flipped open, it was like, it covered the potty and it just was, I put in a little baggie, and it was just a little potty seat, and it, you know, flipped open, so it was very easy in a public restroom, you know, and then I could sanitize it really easy,
In
and,
the bag, so.
yeah, and you
it's
just put it
not-
back in the
it's
bag,
like
so it's.
Thing in your purse.
Exactly. You know, and I still have, obviously, the little bag with some extra pants and all the things. I just remember that when she did have that moment of the self-flushing toilet, and we were about to get on an airplane, and I'd had all these, you know, things, but didn't think to have like all the extra. I mean, I had some, but it's like, oh, and I didn't realize it would set. It would really like, that was it. That was like, do not put me on the toilet again for a while. And we tried, being real gentle, like, oh, this guy, it's the hotel. It doesn't do it on its own. And she was like, so yeah.
Putting a diaper over the
Sensor.
sensor will make it might flush it initially when you put the diaper over the sensor, but then it won't flush again. So we're helpful.
We
Like in an effort to combat the whole like fear of public bathrooms, do you think it's recommended to try to go wherever you happen to be when you're in this process?
Yeah. Restaurants, and just so they're exposed to like different,
Okay.
porta potties are still no.
Yeah, because
That's
kids
gonna
send
happen
kids
also.
off in the public
Me too.
bathrooms.
Oh yeah, they're so loud. Yeah.
That's like
I don't know if I have an experience with this. I did have a student who was having some fear of using public restrooms, and the parent had a potty they would keep in the car that the child used, but it kind of backfired, and the child would only go
right.
in a little
And
potty
then
in
if
the
you
car.
don't have
And
it,
she just, when she get dropped off at school, she didn't want anything else, so, you know,
you gotta be careful what you're gonna set up. Yes.
yeah, so just, what we're sort of habituating kids on, if they get used to only one thing,
Right.
that can sometimes backfire.
And that is particularly a danger with kids with ASD.
Yeah. And I just saw that recently with the little one for nap time, she didn't have, her mom forgot her blanket, and they have extra ones at school, and she was not, it was, again, it was just no, not napping, I'm not even gonna sit, cause I don't have my blanket, and she has some, some neurospiciness, as my friend says, and yeah, so you just have to be, like, if you have that special stuffing, it's a great, but it can be very delicate with certain children.
Some general things that were helpful when I was teaching the Reese class, just to get kids in the bathroom, we're making like fun games sometimes, like, you can use like a little, if they were scared of the toilet, using like a pointer to just like touch the toilet with the pointer, and then it becomes like a fun thing, or, you can tickle the toilet, which is obviously wash your hands after, but things to just sort of get them in the room itself, and not have it be this like scary unknown place.
And on the flip side, you don't want to make it that exciting
Yeah.
either, because then you have the ones that they could just be in there all day, flushing and throwing the water.
Yeah, the fine balance.
It really is. Know your kids, that's really know their temperaments, know their styles.
And the vast majority of children do get to the point where they're potty trained by the time they're, in their four-year-old preschool, and by the end of the year, we'll have a few in each class who aren't, but the vast majority of children do get there, even if it seems
Well,
like
in
it's an
school
eternity.
is such a great
Yeah.
thing because everybody droops off to the toilet.
Right.
Yes.
And it's interesting, right? My friends are doing it. I want to be like my friends. In the 3-year-old programs, most kids don't really notice if someone else is wearing a diaper, and same in the 4-year-old program. So if that's an anxiety for you, the kids don't tend to notice as much at that age. So it's not like children are being ostracized by their peers. Once they get to kindergarten, kids do start to notice a little more if there's a child with a diaper. But in the pre-K years, it's not like it's the end of their social life.
Yes.
Got a behavior analyzing question here. So our almost 3-year-old pooped in the potty like 2 weeks ago, and now sometimes when we ask her to use the potty, she's like, "Oh, I use the potty. I've used the potty."
Yeah.
And so like
Yeah.
this one time, it's like, I am now a potty user.
Never happened to
But
me.
yeah,
Did it at school.
And so is she pooping in her diaper?
oh yeah.
Yeah. So, same deal, just get her to diaper on, poop in the bathroom, and then,
It's like desensitization for that.
But we
Like
had that
steps.
conversation with her, it's like, no, you're not a potty user, like, you're or is that,
That's a
or
lot of
did that
confidence.
verge into shame?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but, the visuals, and I don't know if you have a visual for that, but the visuals are just so, good, and with pooping, if it's nice and easy, you usually know when she's gonna poop. I mean, is it
Yeah.
before dinner, is it
Oh,
after
yeah.
breakfast,
She's
whatever it
great.
is. So you can capitalize on using that knowledge of what time it is, and make a little, get her a little star chart if she poops in the, or if she goes into the bathroom or whatever.
She looks at me, she goes, those are my stickers, and then she just walks out.
I have to
Not
love
decent.
her confidence. It really is. It's like, this, well, I know, you say, it's like, oh, you won't. But I love that you think you do, and yeah, just trying to kind of reframe and like, okay, well, okay, great, let's try it again. Can you try it again? Show me.
Next time.
Yeah,
Well, and there is also nothing, I mean, it's not shaming to say, oh, rats, we pooped in our diaper, let's clean it up, you help. So, you know, to the extent that you are able, without making everybody, you know, get, you know, some awful disease, help her to put the poop in the potty, and then help her to wipe her butt. So, because there is so, you know, that's natural, those are natural consequences. So, there's nothing, you're not punishing her, you're just saying, here, we gotta clean up, because we had an accident, so let's clean up.
Cause if she does it while she's being private and you're cleaning up after
Oh,
her,
yeah,
then
I
what's
see.
her incentive?
Yeah.
You know, this way it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna keep doing that, you're gonna have to help, and that's just the way this goes. And not like she said in a shameful way, just
It's matter of fact.
matter of
just
fact,
the
we
way-
all do it, so. You're a big girl now, so.
And yes, it's gonna be harder for her to help than for you to do it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, over the years, we've been trying to stop her from helping, like, don't touch that, you know?
Yes.
And there also is, and it works with some kids and it doesn't work with others. Like, you know, if she would have an accident watching TV or something, if she's watching TV and pooping or whatever. An accident, and you clean up. And then, there are some kids who are willing to, who would be, you can encourage them to practice. Oh, here, you were sitting here, let's practice getting up and going to the potty. So there's practice, going to the potty, going back, going to the potty, going back. So, but if, you know, if you can get 1 or 2 times, great, and if you can't, then just don't make a big deal.
What I'm hearing from both of you is like parents taking a little bit of the pressure off themselves of it's okay if it's not perfect.
And that everybody's kind of on their own schedules. You'll have that one, the day they turn 2, they're like, done, and then the other one's 3 and a half. 'Cause that's what I hear that, I'm like, oh my God, it's like, they're gonna be okay, they're gonna be okay. Yeah, and you were asking all the resources, I stay off the internet, it's just my best parenting advice, yes. But there's a couple, like, you have some sources that you brought, I will say 0 to 3, website through NYC, it's great. They have a whole, that's where I've gotten a lot of my sources, parenting, data-driven, like a lot of research-based techniques, and it's 0 to 3 spelled out. And it's just one of the best resources I have ever found for families. It's just very solid, very developmental based, especially in toileting, so.
And they have lots of information and resources
Lots.
about, you know, like
Yeah, it's
generally
very
about-
user-friendly,
yeah,
but
about,
there is a lot, yeah,
raising a child.
yeah.
Marianne, do you have any resources for kids with autism or maybe who have other diagnoses that might make this more challenging than a typical child?
You know, there is, I think I put the website here from the May Institute,
Okay,
which is an old thing for kids with developmental disabilities.
okay, thank you.
Well, I've got some visuals on